and gave it to me like the night before the tournament, and it was just that zombie control deck. It was just the best deck, and we had it, and I top forward with it. I was top four in the jump, and I was playing, I think, Jonathan LeBounty. And it was game 3. I have like 8 cards to his 0 cards, literally 0 cards. He top decks Pot of Avarice, which shuffles back a bunch of monsters in his deck, into the 2 cards he draws off Pot of Avarice or Crush Card and Sangan. And it's like, okay, so it's like, I mean, obviously it's like, whoa, like, like I was super irate about it, but it's like, that is literally how the cookie crumbles, like that's just life sometimes. And again, like, and on the flip side of that, I also then the Shonen Jump that I won with Gladiator Beasts, I won with Crush Card. Like in the finals, I Crush Carded the guy, and that was what made me win the entire tournament. So it's like, okay, like you live by the sword, you die by the sword,
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because like I really wanted to touch up with you on this, because I never actually like got to really hear a whole lot of what you had to say, despite aside from the post you made on Pojo. And I know this funny little story that I remember you having in that event. I brought it up with Chris. I can't remember if I brought it up with Dale or not, but I'm going to bring it up to you now because I really want to hear it from your perspective, because I'm really going to laugh about this, because I remember seeing this post on Pojo, and I can't believe I've never asked you about this. But I remember when you were playing the Gladiator Beast deck in Minneapolis, like Geysers wasn't even out yet, so no one was writing this off as like a really good deck then. But I know that your team was, like, you collected all the Test Tigers. I know I'm building up to the moment, and you actually lost your first match against a guy who was running only 2 Dark Arm Dragons when you were permitted 3. I know you were angry, and I'm pretty sure you threw your deck at the wall and said this deck sucks,
true story,
if I recall correctly. And then but then you ran the table and you won the whole event. So what was, first of all, wrap me through your mind around how everything was for you, like after you just lost that first match, and then how like you still were able to like rebound yourself all the way
so
to,
the reason, so the whole thing about that definitely did happen. I lost round 1, and I was so mad. I was mad at Anthony because he's the one who convinced me to play that deck. And I took my deck, I threw it against the wall, the deck box exploded, cards went everywhere. I was like, I can't believe you because the reason is though, because that wasn't the first tournament that I played that deck. So this was, I was in college at this time, so I wasn't playing in any events other than YCS. So I was just like, I would fly out for the tournament and then fly back to school. And this was like the 50th Shonen. So before the YCS Minneapolis was the 50th jump that Lazaro won, where he beat Chris, right? That was Lazaro won with Dark Arm Return, right? If I recall correctly. So we started, that's where the original Gladiator Beats deck was played. Was like, it was like, that was the whole point. It was like, Anthony was like, I have this deck that kind of just beats Dark Arm Return. So if everyone's going to be playing that, you should just play this. And again, I wasn't really testing. So I was just like, okay, like, you know what's good and I'll play it. And so I played that in the 50th YCS, which was the biggest tournament of all time. And that was like the one he really wanted to win. This was like the tournament of all tournaments at that time. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but I know I didn't do very well. And I know that but I also didn't play many Dark Arm decks. Like I lost like 6 Samurai and Burn or something like that, which is like, oh, like, okay, like again, you get janky little losses like that. So whatever, fast forward now to Minneapolis, and same thing. I fly in for this tournament, and Anthony is there, and Chris is there, and like we're like play testing and stuff, and he's just like, yeah, like play this deck again. And I'm like, I like the deck, but I'm just like, I don't know, like I should just play like Dark Arm Return. And Anthony convinced me to play the deck, and I was like, but I did it begrudgingly because I was like, I got scraped last time, and they weren't playing it. Also, remind you that like they're convincing me to play this deck, but they're not playing the deck, So it's like, so I'm like, all right, but I saw that it was good. I was like, okay, like you just like play Dark Arm, like you just win, like it was just like that. That was pretty self-explanatory. It was like the deck was made to beat Dark Arm, and then in the previous tournament, I just didn't play Dark Arm. So I was like, well, that's just bad beats. So I played it again this time, and again, round 1 comes, I play Dark Arm, and this guy, like you alluded to, only had 2 Dark Arms in the deck, which is just a bad version of Dark Arm. Basically, at that time, Dark Arm Dragons were like $300, and like so there was a lot of other cards that were super expensive at beats. So I played it, like you just win, like it was just like that. That was pretty self-explanatory. It was like the deck was made to beat Dark Arm, and then in the previous tournament, I just didn't play Dark Arm. So I was like, well, that's just bad beats. So I played it again this time, and again, round 1 comes, I play Dark Arm, and this guy, like you alluded to, only had 2 Dark Arms in the deck, which is just a bad version of Dark Arm. Basically, at that time, Dark Arm Dragons were like $300, and like so there was a lot of other cards that were super expensive. So it was like, if you didn't have enough money, you couldn't play the real deck, which was kind of a crappy situation. But whatever, that's the reality of the situation. So like you knew that if someone had a half-built Dark Arm deck, they weren't that good because the good players had the cards, right? So it's like that was always something. It's like if you're good enough, you get the card somehow. Like no top-tier player would ever go to a tournament and be like, yeah, well, I only had 2 Dark Arms. Like they figured out a way. You know, you have friends who lend it to you, you buy it, you do something, you hustle for it, whatever. So when I lost to that, after having just lost, again, flying out from college the night before and coming all this way and having lost in the same way in the previous tournament, that's why I was like pretty irate. And I threw the deck and I was like, I can't believe you tricked me into playing this deck again. Like this is like, I can't believe how stupid I was. Like I keep falling for this. And then, and then all of a sudden it just, but I did play eight or nine more pure Dark Arm decks. Like I played that, the deck was made to build, I think I played 1 6 Samurai deck. And that was like my only non-Dark Arm matchup, and that was probably like my hardest matchup of the day. But also in that deck, I played Crush Card, right? So people always talk about, like, it's funny because people talk about like me like cheating or something with that, I remember. But it was like I played Crush Card with just 1 Sanguine and 1 Spirit Reaper. Like that was like my 2 darks. And people were like, oh, like that's so like you can't play those like Crush Card with only 2 darks, that you had to be like stacking it or something like that. But like I literally only used Crush Card once the entire tournament. It just happened to be in the finals of that game 2 of the finals when I lost game 1, and it just happened to be so. My whole reasoning, and like Anthony said this too, or like other people have done, like it's just like back then Crush Card was not released to the public. Like we had prize cards because we used to win a lot of tournaments, so I had a Crush Card. It was like you don't not play that card. You know, like card, it doesn't matter that I can only activate it once a tournament. It's when that one time a tournament comes, you win the tournament you win that game automatically. So I played it only having Sanguine and Spirit Reaper in my deck. And again, when game 2 of the finals, I randomly drew it against him, and he had like a built-up board, and like I Crush Carded him, and it made me come back and win the game, and then I ended up destroying him game 3, and like that's how I won the second tournament. But it all literally was like I had to win out perfectly because I just got so unlucky in the first round and lost to the worst deck that I was supposed to have the best matchup against. So it was super frustrating, but you know it all worked out in the long run.
So how were you able to like recover from like what seemed to be like a really like damning loss in your round 1 to kind of give yourself like a clear head to kind of be able to finish off the rest of the tournament, and then all of a sudden take it to the finals and win? Because I'm pretty sure you're undefeated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I was always I never really went on like tilt or whatever, like people would say. Like I was always pretty like, and this is just still in my life. Like I'm a very like logical thinking person, so it's like I'm good at putting my emotions to the side, and it's like I know like if I'm gonna win, I'm gonna win. If I'm gonna lose, I'm gonna lose. So I don't really like, even though again like that, like when I was frustrated in that moment, of course I threw my deck at the wall. But again, that was more because I was mad at myself for listening to my friends when I was like debating it, like even up until the morning of the tournament. Like we're like again in the hotel room the morning before, and I'm like, should I play this deck or not? So I was just kind of mad at myself for making the wrong choice. But I was never that type of person who was like, oh, like I lost or whatever. It was always the same. It was like you just gotta win. Like there was no, it doesn't matter. You lose round 1, you lose round 8. Same thing when you get to you get to the finals, top 8. I mean, listen, that's again how long I've been playing. When I first topped, it was top 8, right? Like then it was top 16, then it was top 32. And all of those times you make top 8, make top 16, make top 32, like all Swiss goes away. It doesn't matter. You can go 10-0. There were multiple times I went undefeated in Swiss and then lost the first round of the thing. So like what's better, to go undefeated in Swiss and lose the first round in top, or to lose round 1 but then go all the way? So it's like those little details don't really matter, and to let myself kind of like play off or something, again, that's the difference between a good player. Bad players get thrown off by dumb things like that, by getting put on tilt, by having a loss, like, oh god, I gotta win 9 more rounds. Yeah, like so what, I had to win 9 more rounds no matter what. I always had to go 9-1. I just got my loss out of the way. There was no playing around that no matter what.
Yeah, there definitely is like a psychological factor that like affects you throughout the game if you like lose on like a bad beat or just like a horrible misplay. Because I've definitely done that myself, where I've had like one really bad loss or something, and then I've just been on tilt like the entire day. So keeping that cool is definitely like a luxury to have, if you can have that, and keeping yourself under control throughout that. Yeah, of course, like there are moments that people just get frustrated at the moment. That happens. That's normal. You can't really blame somebody for being upset at the moment. It's just, can you let that hit you for the rest of the day, which is apparently what you're telling me. Clearly, you weren't bothered by the porn. I don't know. It's because you've been there before, that this is something that you've been used to, that you've normally done or whatnot. But at the end of the day, like when you do it enough times, you kind of become like.
Hi, man.
I mean, this at that point, I had already won a Shonen Jump and topped like 6 or 7, in between, or maybe more than that at that point. So yeah, I was nowhere. It was nothing new to me. But it was also just one of those things. Again, like I said, I've been in the position of going 11-0 and then losing in top 32. So it's like I know that it doesn't, or I've also been in the position of going, X and 2, making top 32, and then getting 4th place. So it's like, I knew that it wasn't indicative of like how the tournament was going to end, how you started off. That's a big thing. It's like you can start off bad and then win out. You can start off well and then go 7-0 and then lose the last 3 and end up 7-3. And like what's the difference? So like early rounds of the tournament don't matter unless you lose. Like again, so as long as it's like once you lost out with that first round, it's like that doesn't matter. X and 1 still tops. Like that was never a thing to me. And so okay, how am I going to finish?
And like, and what was that feeling for you at the end when you like finally like won that Shonen Jump championship?
I mean, that was. I mean, listen. I 2 things I do remember very well are the 2 times I won. Like as weird as that sounds, like in my whole life, like yeah, like I remember both times.
Should,
like so when I won the first Shonen Jump, I was literally I think 15. We were in LA. I remember I was with my whole team and like all that stuff. And I just remember both times. Everyone running because like you're in the feature match area and like everyone's watching and the whole tournament is over, so it's like it's just me and like me and my opponent, and there's judges around, and then like it's like they scoop their cards and like everyone just explodes. I remember like Chris literally ran up and like picked me up in this tournament, in the second one, picked me up out of my seat and like hugged me, and like Anthony and like everyone's like running around. It's just like it's a surreal feeling. Like honestly, like you work so hard for something like that, and it's like again, I always had in the back of my head that I should win every tournament because I felt I was the best. But how many times did it actually happen? It didn't happen. It didn't happen very often. So when it does finally happen, it is like it's always a super gratifying feeling, and it's just like you're like, oh, well, it's like wait, like game, like there's a point too where like it's game, but you don't know if it's game yet. You know what I mean? It's like oh wait, like you like once you realize it, you're like wait, you're like I'm about to win right now, and then like when they scoop their cards, they put their hand across the table, you're like oh yeah, like that's crazy, right?
And I can believe it too. I mean, like I had that same like feeling when I won like my first regional. It was my 4th regional that I'd ever played in my life, and it was like looming, and I was the underdog. I just got totally squashed game 1, and then game 2 I came back, and then game 3 it's like oh my god, is this actually gonna happen? And then like I topped like the dimension fusion off the top. I'm like oh my god, this is going to happen. I'm actually going to win. Oh my god, like it just hit me all of a sudden. So. It's definitely a big feeling for sure when you're able to to win that kind of caliber of tournament. No, I haven't topped a YCS, like won a YCS like you have or not. But just for everyone's own like personal milestone on like getting to what they want, like whether it be like getting their first invite, because that's always a thing now that I hear people want to do, or like winning the first regional, or in your case, like winning your first YCS or Shonen Jump championship. Like it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, and like it's something that like you won't really forget. Like so, I don't blame you at all one bit for like being able to recall those.
For sure. And it was also like those 2 times was also I mean like not like almost like cheating in that we had the best deck. Like both of those times, both times I won had nothing really to do with me. Like all I had to do was like it felt like cheating because my deck was just so much better than everyone else's, right? So it was like when I had Bazoo return, there was no chance that I could lose, and that was like one of those like the same thing with the Dark Arm return. I mean with Gladiator Beast against Dark Arm return. It was like I was playing triple Shadow Mirror with Hurt. It was like oh that's just an automatic win. So it's like but it's like again that, and I'm like, I know that I have the better deck, and I know that if I get the right matchups, I'm supposed to win. But again, there's a million tournaments where I felt that way also, where I did have the best deck and I was the best player, and I made, and I would get, and then whatever, something lucky happens and you lose, because there's still, no matter what, you can be the better player with the better deck and still lose. And so times like, as it got like closer and closer, again, it's like, oh, it's like, wait, like I'm in top now, and then like when you make the the top cut, everything kind of resets, right? Because it's like, okay, now it's single elimination. So even though I went undefeated in Swiss, that doesn't mean anything. Like I still have to, now I have to win out. I have to be perfect right now. I have to be perfect day 2, and it's like, it just happens. You're one step closer. All right, now I'm in top 8. Now I'm in top 4. Oh, now I'm in the finals, and that's like. It's like, you're just like, whoa, like this is it. This is what all of this stuff is for. All the play testing, all the all that fun, all the fun stuff. But it was all leading up to this. And when you win, it's crazy. And like I said, I remember my friends. Like I remember the looks on everyone's faces. And I remember like afterwards, everyone congratulating me and stuff. It was awesome.
Remind me again, who was the one who?
I think it was Anthony, or like Anthony and Chris maybe, were like, they were like, I don't know, like they were like play test and stuff like that, and just have ideas. Anthony was usually, so when I run with Bazoo Return, most of the decks that I played were either Shane, Rotaro, or Anthony / Chris. Like they were like, Anthony and Chris are kind of like a hive mind, because they talk a lot, and they made a lot of stuff together. Unfortunately, I used to like to make decks too, but again, the decks that I made, I never really did well with. So you could kind of probably say that I wasn't a very good deck builder. I topped with them. I have some top 32s and like top 16s with my decks, but the decks where I did really well with, decks where I made top 4, where I won prize cards, where I won tournaments, were always with one of their decks, because those guys were just so on top of the game.
Now I was gonna like just poke at you for fun for a second here. Like after you won Minneapolis, there, did you kind of like make it up to Anthony or Chris?
Oh yeah,
for winning the event?
For sure,
because,
yeah.
You called
I was like,
yeah,
all right, okay. I guess, I guess it worked out.
Maybe buy him a drink or something.
I guess this was a good idea, but it's funny too, because again, like, and that's the type of person Anthony was, where he would make that deck, know it was better, but he would be too scared to play it, right? Because he was always a super like. Play it safe guy. So like Bazoo Return also, he topped the event that I won with Bazoo Return, and he knew about Bazoo Return. Like we showed him the deck. We weren't on the same team back then. This is when I was on Team Scoop still, but Anthony and we were friends. So we were like at this hotel the night before, and he saw our deck and he knew we had it, and he was just like, I'm gonna play 1 Bazoo and 1 Return, because I think that it, like 3 is too many. And I was like, nope, 3 is definitely the way to go. Like that's just automatic win. And he made top 8, and me and my teammate at the time, this kid Carlos, we both had 3 and 3, and I won, and he got top 4, and Anthony got top 8 because he had 1 and 1, and like he was always like that. Like he had the ideas and he knew it was good, but he was like, but I'm not gonna go all the way where I would be like, nope, like throw me off the deep end. Like I'm gonna, like if this is the best thing, then it's the best thing. Like I'm not gonna go half in, half out. Like we're gonna do it or we're not.
Man, it was just really fun to kind of watch all that unfold in Minneapolis, because I was in Vietnam during the time, so I was there for 6 weeks, so I didn't really get to play any Yu-Gi-Oh! All I got to do was just like kind of watch what was happening. So when I saw you won Minneapolis with Gladiator Beasts, I'm like, holy Jesus! I'm like, I was not expecting this at all. And like Mario Mathieu, your finals opponent was Darkest Dragon. Like, who saw this coming? Like all of us were expecting like Dark Arm Dragon all across the board, and like what? Like,
well, that was exactly it. Like exactly. So again, I lost to Dark Arm Return, or Dark Arm in the first round, then won out against almost all Dark Arm decks all the way up to the finals, and then of course in the finals I played not a Dark Arm deck, and that's how I almost lost. Again, I lost game 1 swiftly, and then game 2 again I would have lost again, but I actually had Crush Card and Crush Carded his Light and Darkness Dragon, and like that was what won me the game. But it's like that, that's a luck thing, right? Of course, like I made the perfect deck to beat the perfect matchup, but then in the finals, the one match in the whole tournament I don't play against that matchup would have been in the finals, So there's always that type of luck thing, where even though I had the best deck that was guaranteed to win, I could have just gotten a bad matchup like that, and then it's like, oh, it doesn't always work out.
And it's really funny how that does, because like we've seen examples of how like Crush Card can kind of pull through, like especially in your situation. Also, like if you remember Cedric Zakera when he was playing against Hector Harris in the finals, when Cedric won his match, like he just completely blew him away because Crush Card Virus just completely destroy the entire matchup. And I know that I'm sure that you've had a lot of people that kind of came at you because you had Crush Card, but as you alluded to yourself, you said,
yeah. I mean, like, again, back there, Crush Card
tournament.
eventually came out. It got reprinted, but there was a time when there was Golden Sarcophagus and Crush Card were both prize cards that only we had. Like most people didn't have those, right? And like I had like we had on our team like 3 or 4 Crush Cards and like four Dark Sarcophaguses or something, so we could play decks that normal people couldn't play. So like to pass that up and not do that would was just foolish. Like it was just like it just gave me such a commanding advantage to be able to have access to these certain power cards that like it was just but people don't understand that. People just like again, if you don't have that ability to play the card, you wouldn't even test with it, right? Like why would you if you didn't have a Crush Card back then, you didn't have 4 Crush Cards. What are you doing testing Crush Card in your deck? Well, we test that thing because it was like, again, we had 4 Crush Cards, but we might have 8 people on the team. So it's like we had to know which deck was the best to put Crush Card in because we have who got to use it. So it was like, well, we had to make the decision of like, all right, like this deck is the best deck, and adding Crush Card to it is the best decision. So Paul gets to use the Crush Card because it was a team thing.
And like, you really had to like kind of devote like your deck to being able to play because you're playing Gladiators, which like none of them at the time, because guys versus now, none of them were dark, so you had to fit in your own monsters. So that's why you decided like chuck in some cards like Spirit Reaper and Sankin to kind of offset that. And then as like Crush Card Virus got got more like publicly available to everybody, people were starting to main like triple DD Crow as part of it as well to really help set it off. So it wasn't like a card that you could just kind of throw in per se. Like you really had to figure out like, is this card like worth it in this kind of deck because like you don't have
exactly, but exactly like you said, we thought about it. That's what I'm saying. People would just think like you might look at it and be like, oh, what a weird decision. Like nothing that we did was a weird decision. There was nothing that was not thought about. That there was a reason that we were so dominant in that game. Like there was a reason for that time that we like. Again, I don't like. It sounds cocky to say, but like I know that we were the best team. Right? It's just known because no one was doing what we were doing. Like we were like operating at a higher frequency. So it was like everything was planned out. It was all supposed to happen that way. In reality, we were supposed to win a lot more than we do. Again, if you break down the amount of wins we had, and then you open that up to top 2s and top 4s, like Overdose probably had like 20 some odd wins. You probably have well into 100 to up to 200 like top 4 appearances because of just like random, like got so close but got luck sacked out of it at like the last minute when we had the better play with the better deck but just lost to some lucky stuff. So it's like everything was planned out. Everything was meticulous, so like people to think that like it's like, oh, like that was random. Like it was never random. It was exactly how it was supposed to be.
Yeah, because I find that like that's really about a lot of what I see from a lot of people around me nowadays is that like there's not a lot of practice that goes on here. Like a lot of people just go into like regionals or something and they kind of go cold turkey, and then they come at it and say like, well, how come I didn't do well? Like I totally should have been able to win this or whatnot. And like every person I've talked to so far that's like of like your level, like high caliber level, they tell me like I put in like this many hours like a day, this many hours a week to be able to like and think about this to meticulously like win these events. It's like it's not something you just kind of get up and go and really play. Like you really have to put a lot of time into winning these events, and this really circles back to what we were talking about at the start of the podcast: is how much time we're able to put in to be able to actually like win these events and deck testing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a level of dedication, which is great. It's a good hobby. It's fun. It's an awesome thing to dedicate yourself to if you have the time and you have the opportunity. But it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like that does not happen by accident. You might win a jump not being that good. You could get 1 or 2 tops not being that good. But if you want to be that elite level of like multiple tops or I mean, and don't get me wrong, a big part of it is the teamwork, right? Like I say we because it was always us. It was like OD, it was Scoop, it was like me and my friends, and like there was no way I could have ever become that good without all of them because you need someone good to play test against. You need someone good to bounce ideas off of. You need someone good to build these decks with. Like I would be, I would build a deck, send it to Anthony. Anthony would chop it up, say this sucks, this sucks, this sucks. He'd send me a deck. I'd test it. I'd say, okay, this is what we need to change. I'd talk to Dale. Dale would send me a deck Lazaro was working on. Like it was a huge hive mind, and it was a teamwork thing that was like, it was bigger than any one of us could have been on our own for sure. But it was a lot of effort and time. I used to like leave from high school, drive an hour to Anthony's house, and I lived in New York, I lived in Brooklyn, he lived in New Jersey. I had to drive 45 minutes to an hour to his house every day after school to like test until like 7 o'clock at night, and then drive back home and go to school the next morning. That was like I used to like leave from high school, drive an hour to Anthony's house, and I lived in New York, I lived in Brooklyn, he lived in New Jersey. I had to drive 45 minutes to an hour to his house every day after school to like test until like 7 o'clock at night, and then drive back home and go to school the next morning. That was the kind of stuff that we did. But that's how we became the best.
Mm-hmm. So you really would attribute the having a team is definitely
so having a team was yes, because again, a big part of Yu-Gi-Oh, I think, for everyone is the social aspect of it, right? You can't deny that part. That's what's so fun about it. So that's what keeps it going. But that's also what made it feasible for us having the best team. Was having those again, knowing different metagames and stuff like that. Like I would fly to California, play with Adam Korn and his stuff. I would talk to Dale. What are you guys playing in Canada? What's going on? Okay, we're having a tournament in Chicago or Minneapolis. A lot of Canadian players come down from there, but a tournament in Florida, there might not be as much Canadian, so I don't need to worry about that. Like it was, all this stuff got thought about. But then again, there is just the level of, we were all also just good friends. So you're talking about, we would travel, like I was, 15, 16, we were taking 15-hour road trips to tournaments in a passenger van with 16 people. That was just fun. Right, so it was like part of it. Yes, the teamwork was we needed that to become the best. But those are also my friends. Like we spent hours, days in cars together and hotel rooms, and we shared money. We shared, like we would sponsor each other. We shared cards. If I, so it was a huge part of everything was like having those people around you. Like to do all, there would just be no way any of those things could have happened if I was by myself. Like I couldn't have got to the event. I couldn't have had the cards to play in the event. I wouldn't have had the deck list. I wouldn't have had the skill. Like none of those pieces would have existed without everyone else on my team.
Mm-hmm. So how did you come from going from like Team Scoop up until Team Overdose, and then also absorbing Dale Lazaro and Matt Pennell from Team Super Friends into becoming the new Overdose? Like how did all
I
that,
can start from the beginning. Again, I started all the way back in starter decks, and like this when I was in like junior high school. And then it was only locals back then. This is when we were still playing for those Millennium Eye trophies. You know what I'm talking about? So I won one of those, and I used to play this little store called Animation Odyssey by me here in Brooklyn. I was young, and it was like, again, it was like it was no one good. It was nothing like that. But then eventually, Shane Scurry, and a few of my other friends who eventually would become Team Scoop came to that store. They used to play at another store. And like they were older than me, but they basically used to win all the tournaments at their store, and then I was winning all the tournaments at my store. So when they came over, like we used to butt heads and play and stuff like that. But then we kind of realized they were like, all right, instead the tournaments used to be sometimes on the same day. So they were like, instead of us playing against each other, they're like, why don't you stay at this store and win all the tournaments here, and we'll go to this store and win the tournaments here, and like we'll kind of like, and that's how the first team started. Like we literally started making teams. Like that was like one of the first things. Like, and then we started to pool our cards, and then we learned about regionals. So like this is when regionals had first started, and then Shonen Jump. So the first Shonen Jump came to the East Coast was New Jersey. And that's when like Anthony Alvarado topped, and like Brian Cornell and a bunch of them. And this was they were Overdose, and those guys were New Jersey. We were New York, so we knew these guys because we would see them in regionals and stuff like that. I would play against them. Like they were like our friends from like how anyone is your friend in like a tournament. Like they weren't like, I didn't know them that well. But then when the first Shonen Jump came to New Jersey, the Team Comic Odyssey came, and Comic Odyssey was from California. And like that's when we first learned. They were like, wait a second, like you can travel for this stuff. Like it never occurred to anyone that was a thing that people would do, travel for events. So we then Team Scoop, which was like me, Shane Scurry, and a bunch of older Brooklyn players, we got sponsored by this store called whatever dot. It was like an internet cafe, like I'm super confused myself. I don't know what that is. There was like an internet cafe, but again, they sponsor us, so they would pay for our trip out there. But in order to pay them back, what we would do is they had a mat printer, so they would print custom mats, like dueling mats. So again, we started like that was a thing too. That was not a thing before we started it. So like all this stuff that people already take for granted now, like we made all this stuff happen. Like so they would print custom mats, and I would fly out to a random state with like one of my suitcases with my clothes in it, and an entire suitcase full of custom mats. and I would stay there and sell all the mats and bring them back the money, and that's how I would pay for my trips. So we would be doing that, and like that's how we first started traveling and stuff. And like then again being from New York, and Anthony and Chris and Brian and all them being from New Jersey, like we played in the same regionals and stuff, and then they started traveling as well. So now it kind of like as we started getting more serious, our like scoop kind of dwindled down because there were some players who were not on the level that like me and Shane were, who were really traveling and stuff like that. And then they with Anthony and them, like they had a bigger team at first, and it kind of dwindled down. So it kind of because at first you could say these were like the neighborhood teams, right? Like we were the Brooklyn team, they were the New Jersey team, because that's where we were. Like we were playing in our hometown. But once we started traveling, it shifted because now it was like the people who were serious. Like the guys, like we had friends who were on our team who weren't that good at Yu-Gi-Oh, right? But they were on our team because they were our friends, and that was it. Same thing with Anthony, same thing with Chris. Like they had other members of the team who were good, but not that good. So they weren't going to invest money into traveling to events and stuff like that. So that's how I guess Scoop and Overdose kind of merged, because it was like, all right, now that we were all traveling together, and like we had kind of trimmed the fat, so to speak, not to be mean, like those are my friends still, but like they weren't like in terms of playing, like they were not going to become the next level players that we wanted to be. So it just made sense that we merged, and we kind of now we're like, all right, we're all down to be on this level. We're going to be on this level. So then, we became like the team, right? So now it's like, all right, we're all going to travel together. We're going to pool our resources, and we're going to do it like that. And then that's when again, the more we travel, the more we started meeting more people. Go to the West Coast, we meet Iman and Adam Korn later. Go to Canada, meet Dale. I mean, I met Dale, and then my second top, Dale, when the event that Dale won, he beat me. So we had known each other for a while, but again, like they were the Canada team, and we were the U.S. team. So then like a few Canada jumps had came, and like Dale, I stayed at Dale's house. I stayed at Matt Peddle's house one time for a Canada jump. I stayed at Dale's house one time for a Canada jump. So like those were my friends, like they were like we would hang out, and like I love those guys. And then again, it just made sense that after a while they kind of went through that same transition where they were traveling a lot, and it was like the core team that was kind of traveling all the time was not the same as like the Canada team who was like back home. So it's like they had like there were 3 or 4 players who Dale, Matt Peddle, Lazaro, and like they were like, all right, we're going to travel, like we are going to buy plane tickets and fly to the US, like we want to be that level of team. So again, it kind of just happened organically, where now it's like if it was the original Super Friends that was like 7 or 8 people, and the original Scoop. So then like a few Canada jumps had came, and like Dale, I stayed at Dale's house. I stayed at Matt Peddle's house one time for a Canada jump. I stayed at Dale's house one time for a Canada jump. So like those were my friends, like they were like we would hang out, and like I love those guys. And then again, it just made sense that after a while they kind of went through that same transition where they were traveling a lot, and it was like the core team that was kind of traveling all the time was not the same as like the Canada team who was like back home. So it's like they had like there were 3 or 4 players who Dale, Matt Peddle, Lazaro, and like they were like, all right, we're going to travel, like we are going to buy plane tickets and fly to the US, like we want to be that level of team. So again, it kind of just happened organically, where now it's like if it was the original Super Friends that was like 7 or 8 people, and the original Scoop that was 8 people, and the original Overdose that was 10 people, like you couldn't have a team like that. But because of the traveling, because of the people who kind of like were like, all right, like I'm going, like you could see who was already ready to make that step to be at that next level, and the people who weren't that serious about it. So the people who were all ready to level up, we kind of just did it together.
Yeah, because like I remember, like I know a lot of your like members of OD like way back when, because like I know like not every single one of them was kind of like there. Like for instance, like I didn't see like Rymus or Sean a whole lot when we played, but then I would always see you. I always see, of course, I'd see Dale and Lazaro because I'm like an hour and a half away from them. But like I think obviously like there are members who are like up higher than the other guys, and like they accept that, like they're not maybe into the game as much, because I know that like Rymus stepped out of the game a lot sooner than I know that everyone else did. And like I love Rymus, he's an awesome guy. Every time we interact with each other, like it's always been cool, it's always been awesome. But like not everyone's like decided that they want to be on that level, or they just they don't take the game as seriously maybe. But that happens. It's like same thing with when I had a team too. Not everybody was like as hardcore as I was, but we still had like a good collaboration with each other. And it's kind of like with you. Not every single OD member is like gonna be like that the very best. Kind of like every sports team. Like not this one team is going to have like an all-star roster of players. It's going to be like your like in hockey, you kind of like your fourth line players. You might
Yeah,
have, like,
100%.
your
I mean,
second-string
exactly
players.
that. It's like
it's kind of
we
like
have
that.
like they are my teammates who are my teammates because those are my boys. You know, like those are the homies, and we're gonna like that. That's just my family. But like what I'm talking about, my team, like to play test with, and the people who are like, all right, we're gonna have a team war. That's who I'm picking up. Like that's different. You know, those are the people who are taking it seriously. So exactly that. So like Rymus or Sean or something like that, they might be like they knew they didn't care. They didn't have the again. We talked about 100 times on this podcast already how much effort it was to be good at this game. So it's fine for you to say like, nah, I don't really want to put in all that effort. Like I just want to play with you guys when we're at the local store. And that's awesome. Those are again, that's fine. But when we were talking about traveling and stuff like that, all right, we're booking flights, we're booking hotels. Who's down? Now you know, okay, like these are the people who are really trying to do it. You know.
Exactly that, because not every single one of my teammates would travel with me to go out for big events. I had about maybe one teammate that would like two teammates that would like travel out with me and whatnot. One teammate would be responsible for like maybe like acquiring a bunch of cards for us to be able to play with and whatnot. And I'm sure like you kind of have like a similar system with like a kind of like a hierarchy and whatnot of like who does what in your role. Like everyone has their role in a team in a sense. Maybe like double roles. So maybe
Yeah, for sure, exactly.
But
so it really was just, and that again, that one Shane and Shane more so than me. But back then, I really was like we were like vendors. So again, we started like another thing that we started like we were the first like real backpackers. Like play, you know, like we started having tables. That's originally why we stopped playing as much, is because we would go to the events and like we would make more money having a vending table than to play. So it was like after a while, like but like people weren't doing that back then. Like it used to be like Troll and Toad would have a table or TCG, TCG play or something like players weren't buying vending tables until we started doing that. People weren't coming with their own custom mats until we started doing that. Like we wanted to be the best and we made it happen. You know, like we made it, like we made the blueprint for what the rest of these people did. Like people weren't doing that. People weren't flying to, like across the country because they didn't have a way to fund it. But it was like, all right, well, like let's go a step further. We don't have a way to fund it. Let's find a store that will that'll pay for it. Let's make sure that we win a prize card and that we will pick a team that's so good that we guarantee we win a prize card, because they also used to do prize cards for side events and side events by points, right? So it was like, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, where like you would get a certain amount of points for every side event you played in, and then at the end of the weekend there would be a top 4 playoff for a prize card. So it's like, okay, even if the tournament is luck, we know that we can we can always hustle the side events and make sure that we win. So it's like if we bring enough people, like it was a science. It was like we had the budget, we had the cards. Because me and Shane did so much vending and so much eBay, we had all the cards. So anyone who needed anything, like we had the cards. We had the players. So we were in the main event, we were in the side event. We had other stuff like we had connections all over. So it's like, again, if I'm in California, I had some place to stay. Again, I was, we were young, so I wasn't trying to spend so much money. We were all broke too. We were making it happen in different ways where other people might have made excuses, or other people might have not figured out a way. Just like I said before, where it's something like the whole Dark Arm Dragon thing. Like if you didn't have a third Dark Arm Dragon, like I knew you weren't that good, I wouldn't respect you because I would have found a way to get that third Dark Arm Dragon. That's what I'm saying. Not saying that it wasn't expensive. Like, yeah, I get it's $300. That sucks. But I was never going to enter a tournament with 2 Dark Arm Dragons in my deck when 3 were legal. So that was a perfect thing of like that was the difference of like our team was always going to make that happen. And that's how it kind of like the cream rises to the top. So it's like the people who weren't ready to hustle like that, they were the ones who didn't come, so like that's why it was like, okay, if the original team would stay home, but now we had the bigger travel team of me, of OD, of Super Friends, and like all those different things that kind of just combined because we were all on the same wavelength of like, yeah, like we're gonna make this happen, we're gonna be the best, we are going to crush these tournaments and travel the world and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I have a personal anecdote that kind of relates to that too, like of not having like all the cards like meant to like play like a big event, for example. Like when tour guides were out, they were probably around like 150, 160 like US, something like that. Like I couldn't get my hands on 3. I only had 1. So I decided, okay, I'm not gonna play plants because I don't have 3 tour guides. You need that to be able to play the deck. Like especially when you play the mirror match, it's like I'm gonna get killed because my opponent's got access to 3 tour guides and I only have access to 1. And that's like kind of like the heart and soul of the deck. It's like I'm probably not going to be able to win this if I don't have tour guides. So I opted to play agents instead because it was the only other deck that I had at the time. But it's like that. Exactly. It's like I'm not going to go into like a big event playing like a half deck. Like I have to have everything in order to be able to win because everyone else I'm going to be playing against is going to have like everything that at their disposal to be able to like beat me because it's a regionals or a YCS or a Shonen Jump Championship. These are like some of the best people that are going to come out here and play this event. No way in heck I'm going to be able to beat them if I have like a bunch of
100%. And you know that was the point of
that's
what made the great team. That's what made us as a team so great because that's exactly what was the point. It was like, all right, I know that we needed those cards. So again, we're before the tournament, who's coming to the tournament? What decks are you playing? We made sure we had everything. Like that was the whole point of that stuff. It was like you were never sitting there struggling for some card because we had the team. We had everyone supporting us. We knew that this is the deck list that everyone's using. Like we had it the days before. Send me your deck list so I can make sure that we have all the cards or whatever. Like that was the point of like we all built each other up. So that we could all be great together.
Yeah, that was definitely a big thing too, because like you're being able to like help each other out and like gather the cards you need, help yourself like get to other places. Like that's a really important thing to be able to help yourself get better because it gives you the experience that you need to be able to go on the road and play against like a bunch of different people and just having that support as well. It's just it kind of motivates you in a sense. Like I love competition. And like I get motivated by competition, and that's kind of the same thing too as with your friends. It's like you all want to get better, and you kind of build each other up to get better. Which is why like I think it's such a merit to be a part of a team rather than
for sure. I mean, listen, you have to have that. You have to have someone pushing you to be better. You have to have people pushing you to be better, and you also have to have someone who like you have to be good enough to get better. You have to have the opponent. So like that's the one thing about being in New York, the New York, New Jersey area was we had the best players. So that's why so many good players came out of here. Same thing with Canada, right? Like you're like that area where you guys like Card Masters and that little like you guys had a really good crew. So it's like if you got fortunate enough to come up in one of those places, you went through the fire, you went through the inferno, right? Like there's like even after Dale and Lazaro and Matt kind of had their reign, like there were years later, like kids were still coming out of that store, right? Like there's something to that, right? The area where I played when 10 years ago still has like champions coming out of it. Like there was something about the competitive level of these certain areas, whereas like if you're playing in Wisconsin somewhere that you're just not going to be able to do that. I mean, maybe now, luckily because of the internet dueling book, like you could figure something out. But back then, if you didn't have that level of play and you didn't have a place, if you weren't going to travel, there's no way for you to get good. Like, how could you?
And absolutely that, and I believe that self-discipline too is also like a really big thing that you have to have in this game as well. Like, and I know that I'm just going to. This is just me making my my natural like thoughts on you, but like since you're a personal trainer, like you have to have self-discipline. You have to like go out on like this workout regimen. You have to stick to it. You have to diet properly, and you have to make sure you don't eat like a whole bunch of junk food, or like when you're doing your cheat day, you do it right. Like to get like to the level of like physique that you have now, because I know that you yourself like you have a very good like physique on you because you're a personal trainer and whatnot, so you have to have that kind of discipline as well in Yu-Gi-Oh as well, just and then kind of staying in your lane and making sure that you don't go kind of overboard.
I mean, for me honestly it's funny because both in Yu-Gi-Oh and in fitness they kind of it's more so even than discipline to me. It's just for me a logic thing. It's just like it just makes sense. It's like that's why like when I come back to where we were at the beginning, where I was like I just don't have the time to put into Yu-Gi-Oh. It's really because like I know I only have so much time in the day, so my priorities are like logically I want to work on my health and my fitness because that's what's important to me. And back then when that wasn't a big priority to me, but like I was always big on like okay, like what's the best thing that I can do right now, and that was like for that time trying to be this. Okay, like I'm going to test it this time. I'm going to put in this much time to doing this or whatever. So it's always just been like following the path, and I also think that's why like what separates sometimes the people who are really good is it is something about the way you think, right? So I always say I say this like halfway jokingly sometimes, or I used to. I almost feel bad because I would go, all right, so I won my second jump in I think 2008, right? And again, I played a little bit into 2009. I topped a few dark arm events and stuff like that, and then I kind of stopped because that's when I like in college, my junior senior year, I kind of fell out of the game, and then like maybe in like 2012 I came back. And that was like maybe that gear gut event, So that was like 4 years later, and I came and I just went 8-1 and topped the event, and I was just like, there's no reason. And then in that event, I was seeing people who had been playing, like people who played when I was first starting, who didn't 4 years off, who were still going 6-3 or 5-5 or something like that, So it's just like what is the difference? Like, why is it that I can take 4 years off and come back and be better than these people who are practicing all the time? And it's something about there's something about like people who are more strategy minded. You know, it's the same thing. Like, I can walk by and see someone's hand and be like, I know what to do with that. Whereas some people they'll just never see it. They'll never put the pieces together. And like all of the people who are great like that, the Dales, the Matt Pedals, like Matt Pedal was like amazing like this. Or like they would just look at someone's hand and they would know how to play it better. And there's a level of that can't be taught, right? So it's like no matter what, that you can like that's the thing about, and then that's the difference between coming back to what we were talking about, like the difference between now and then. Because now you kind of can teach it, because again, there's a right and a wrong way to play it. It's like, okay, like you play like it's solitaire and you have to play solitaire a right way. Whereas back then, when there was so much opinion, like they would say like, oh, I would do this because of this and this and this, and be like, oh, whoa, like I would have never thought of that. And that's what made like the difference maker. But it's that strategic, logical thinking, not getting emotional, not again going on tilt because you got a bad hand, because you opened up 3 tengus, or because of whatever thing. And like those were the people who you saw consistently. Like Matt Pedal might have got bad beats all the time, but I know that if I put that like skill wise, I put him up against anyone, I'm going to put me on him. You know, because he had that level of thinking. Same thing with Lazaro, same thing with Dale. It's just like their brain was different, you know?
Yeah, and absolutely, because like, and I've played against all 3 of them, and they just think and they play in this game at a completely different level from what I've seen so many people, and it's absolutely crazy. Like I know, like maybe Matt Pedal doesn't maybe get enough, maybe not enough credit for it, maybe because he could be overshadowed by Lazaro, Dale, or whatnot. But Matt Pedal, in his own right, is a fantastic mind and is a fantastic player of his own right, and he can turn like anything like a bad situation into a good situation easily for him. And like and it's always been one-sided with him and me. Like I think I'm a very like logical and critical thinker myself. Like I'm a philosophy major. It's what I love about it. But like Matt Pedal on a thinking level is completely like beyond anyone I know.
Yeah, for sure. He was definitely one of the best players, and also
for,
like you said, didn't get enough credit because he never actually won. Like he topped a few times, but he was also like the type of person who, like Dale, I think said in his podcast, would like he would play you, and in the last round of the tournament, and he'd go, okay, you take the win because you have a better chance at winning than me, something like that, because we were on the same team. And he's like, no, you got this, like, you know, like stuff like that. So he was just like a super chill person. Like I said, when you know, I would go to Canada and stay with him, and like he was just like one of the best people. But in general, again, it says there's something different about the people. Again, like I go back to like Patrick Hoban or like Jeff Jones. You know, those are the people who they came a little bit after me. I'm doing wrong. I knew Jeff Jones well, but like he was like right towards the tail end of when I stopped playing super competitively. Like I was still playing, but that's when he kind of went on his reign and was doing the best. But it's like, again, you watch Jeff Jones play that plant deck or something like that. Like he was operating at a different level. You know, like and again, that definitely didn't happen by accident. I know for a fact that he was testing like crazy. That he knew that deck inside and out. So it's like when you want when you talk about wanting to be that good, you have to understand that it's like it's not regular. You're not just playing for fun. Like this is like you know, they used to joke Yu-Gi-Oh is serious business, but it is, and it was, right? Like it's like it can't have it both ways. You can't not want to take it seriously, but then be mad when you lose, right? We took it seriously. We made a business out of it. Like I was, you know, up until I was like 22 or something like that, 23. Until I started when I became a personal trainer, I never had a job because I had Yu-Gi-Oh. I money. That was my career. I had eBay. I had tables. I had, you know, I was a vendor. So it was like, this stuff is real if you want to make it real. But it's really about how much effort, how much time, how much passion you want to put into it. It really makes all the difference.
The deck is too high.
For example, like Jeff Jones, like really, he started to really gain a lot of success like back around like 2009 area, like where he finally won his first event and whatnot, and that was kind of like near the tail end of like your career or whatnot. And like I don't want to take anything away from Jeff; he's a fantastic player. But like I knew him since before when I first started playing, like back around like 2005 is when I started playing the competitor circuit. Like you'd hear his name like kind of like top an event here, but he never won anything before that until 2009. Then he won that 100th Shonen Jump Championship, the very last one. Yeah. Or I think it was the 75th. Sorry, in New Jersey, if you recall correctly, in that one. So I mean, I know you've gotten around a lot. Like I always see you at every single event that I went to, at least, because I was always going like northeast United States and anything in Toronto, which is obviously like where you're very close to, because you said you're from Brooklyn. You're like about an 8-hour drive from where I am, so you're not like that far out from where we are. So like we'd always see each other at all events, and like all the time I see you guys around. Like man, that's like if I had to go against you guys, like I feel like I get flattened in another way because like you guys were on a completely different level than I was at the time. Like I thought I was good, but like not like as good as your level at the time. But like God, man, it's like but just kind of like seeing you guys now, like knowing that like having talks with each one of you, like you're all like regular people at the end of the day. Like you're real people with real hobbies. You get your own lives. It's just been really enlightening to kind of talk to you guys now, like on like kind of like a deep intellectual level at this point in time. It's been really refreshing to kind of like really break into your minds now that I've like talked to you like you a lot more. I talked to you, Chris, Dale, like a little bit of Lazaro and like Rymus and whatnot. It's really nice to kind of get down to the core of it as before, like when you like see people from like a lower level to like a higher level, you just kind of think of them as like just like a rival, a rival or like or competition. Like you don't really see them as a person, which is like, man, like
for sure. I mean, it's awesome. Like I said, even though I don't really play anymore, I still respect the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! For all the things that it's brought into my life, all the people, all the good times. Again, I have so many stories of just road trips and tournaments and just so much fun. Like it's a big part of who I am as a person now is 100% shaped by Yu-Gi-Oh! Like there's no way I end up where I am today without the experiences that I have. Even down to like trading and learning. Learning to haggle for cards and like that's business and that all that stuff really matters. So it really is like I like again people joke about it's just a children's card game, but I think anyone who's played at the level that you have or I have or all of our friends is just like that it's more than that. Like that this game is really like something special.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And I had this conversation with Dale, like near the tail end of our podcast. It's kind of like the practical applications that you could use that you have in Yu-Gi-Oh! That you can apply to real life. For example, like we could use like these critical thinking skills and creativity skills for like Yu-Gi-Oh! That kind of help us out with like in real life. Like Dale's in sales now, for example. So that's like a big thing he likes to use. He can kind of use like kind of his charisma, like his wheeling and dealing, because he did a lot of trading then too. And now he can use that in his sales department. And now that's kind of helped teach me how to do sales and whatnot, how to work with people. Like I like to go with like the very friendly approach. I don't like to hustle a whole lot. That's how I like to do like work my business and whatnot. And I'm sure that again, like you probably like applied some like real life applications as well. As I noted for you, like self discipline was a thing. Like going back to your your kind of your physique. Like you really need to like get up every day like early and like work out hard and at least stick to that routine. I think there's a lot of parallels that we can draw.
100%. Again, I mean, listen, I say this all the time in my career's fitness thing because everything's of analogies. Everything is the same. Everything is an analogy for everything, right? Like you can get up and grind a tournament. You can sit and like you can make the hard decisions and stuff like that. So like you said, it's all discipline. Discipline is discipline. Hard work is hard work. Like spending time on your passion is spending time on your passion. Take out Yu-Gi-Oh! And put in lacrosse. Take out lacrosse and put in weightlifting. Take out weightlifting and put in writing. Like it's all the same thing. If you want to be good at something, if you want the result, you commit to the effort of what that thing is going to be. So again, when I was younger, when I was 15 and 16 and 17, that result I wanted was to be the best duelist in the world. And I, and that's what I did. And, so I had friends who had the same goals, right? They always say, I don't know if this is a big fitness thing or personal development. They say a lot like you become the result of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Like so, it's like that's an old quote, but it's like, all right, so who did I spend a lot of time with? Anthony Alvarado, Chris Brovic, Shane Scurry, Dale Bolito, Lazaro Bolito. Like I made sure that I was around the best people. But to even get in those circles, you had to be of a certain caliber. Like so that's what it was. It's like I built myself up, we built each other up, and we all grew together. That's really what it was.
Yeah, and I think you really demonstrated like the real value of like kind of having a team and like all the benefits of doing it, and like how do you like really push each other to be the very best with each other in itself. And that's why I always said that Team Overdose was like one of the most powerful teams like in Yu-Gi-Oh! way back in the old days now. So like I had a lot of respect for you guys when I saw you guys up there, because I knew that you guys were up there always like winning a bunch of events and like performing well. And I played against a couple of you so far. Like I know that like I'm not just joking. Like I really mean it because I've witnessed and experienced it firsthand. And I've seen it, so like I know that you guys like really work hard at it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Listen,
I fucking knew it.
We're all doing different things now, but it is so awesome to just have that. Again, as a memory of something I have my tablecloth, my mouse pad right now that my laptop is on as I'm speaking to you is like a top 8 mat from a Shonen Jump, and I have the Millennium puzzle trophy still in my room somewhere. I lost my Shonen Jump trophies, but in moving. But it's like that is a part of something that like you know we were a part of something big. And again, like I said, coming back to we really made this a thing. Like teams weren't a big thing before we started doing it. People like, oh, like you know, like they were like, because then people saw, they were like, oh, look at what these guys can do with their teams. Before I just thought it was like, yeah, exactly. Like, why would I show someone else my deck when then they could beat me with my deck? But it's like, no, like we realized that if we share decks, because even before Dale and you know we and Lazaro and Matt, like even before we joined forces, so to speak, officially, we still shared with each other. You know, they gave me the deck, the zombie deck that I made top 4 with. Like they would give me deck lists all the time. We would tell them what we're working on. They would tell us what they were working on. It's like we realized that we got better together as opposed to being like, oh no, you can't see what I'm playing because like I need to have the hot secret tech. It's like, yeah, that will get you somewhere. Like you might get a sneak win once in a while, but for the most part, you're going to do better by collaborating with people, with the right people, because again, then you can use their skills and their brain power to build you up more.
And that's exactly what a team's supposed to do. Is it's like take like the best parts of every person and like try to conglomerate together into like what's to really make like the best output that you really can for it. And I'm glad that was able to happen for you and me when I was part of the team. It definitely helped me in that sense. Maybe not to the level that you did, but definitely improved me and myself. And I would encourage anybody out there that
exactly.
start a team.
We were not. Exactly. You can't say I'm only going to start a team with the best people, because then if you did that, we wouldn't have had Chris on our team. Like he was pretty useless, So I just you have to have. You have to have some compassion for people, but again, the point is that you get better together.
Yeah, it really is. And again, it just goes back to sports. Like when you draft players and whatnot, you draft them because you think they're the best, but they're not the best yet. You have to kind of mold them. You have to get them better, train them a little bit, give them some experience, and then that's when they start becoming the best.
Everyone on all the old OD guys, all the Super Friends guys, OD guys, who Dale, all the Canadians, Lazaro and Matt, and all the other ones too. That I remember everyone. Like we had so many good times. But I still talk to these guys like fairly regularly. I try to keep up with them. But the only thing that I would like to say is if anyone is interested in like fitness stuff, I do have my own podcast that's called the Healthy Happy Human podcast, where I talk about fitness and mindset and all the stuff that again I've taken from Yu-Gi-Oh and now transitioned into just being a fitness professional. So if you're interested in that, come check it out. I would appreciate it.
And all of those links will be below in the description on the YouTube channel. Paul, man, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate you taking out the time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. For more information, check out the Game Expectations podcast on YouTube.
If he has it, I swear to God. Okay. That's like the most optimum play. Yeah, you got it.
Walking alone, I'm in the red lines, trying to find the right time. Walking alone, I'm in the red light, trying to find the right time. Walking alone, I'm in the red lines. eat all these lies up. Let me hide them. Let me eat all these lies up. Let me hide them. Let me eat all these lies up. Let me hide them. Let me eat all these lies up. Let me hide them. Such a hurricane, such a hurt and pain, trapped in my soul and I can't explain. Such a hurricane, such a hurt and pain, trapped in my soul and I can't explain. You won't find it by yourself. You're gonna need some help, and you won't fail with me around. Come on, let's go. I will tell you if you change. And who's been saying things it's hard to tell? Who is real in here? Come on, let's go. You know who to turn to now everything's changed. Come on, let's go. Stop looking for answers in everyone's face. Come on, let's go. What's the point in wasting time on people that you'll never know? Come on,
I don't know. I still don't really know how I feel. I'm like, it's alright. I do like the swaps, like they're amazing. But I kinda wanna make a new one with tomato engine. 2 tomatoes. I don't know, bro. Dude, I'm starting to not like Fusler Dragon. Like, this is the blueprint. What would I change? Add a premature, add a demock, and we call it good. Honestly. Oh yeah, take out the upstarts. Demock and premature. It's pretty good. Take out soul release. This is, yeah, I mean, you just have to accept it for what it is. This is a high roll deck, period. Nothing more to say after that. You could play tomatoes, but I don't know. It's just too high gamble for me. I like the chill, the chilly chill. Yeah, that's pretty lit. If you really wanted to, premature. Deep, dark, chaos. You just literally cut a TT and yeah, I don't know. Anyways, we'll take a break. Peace. After this, what is this? Dude had a crazy ass hand. Yeah, that, yeah, not my proudest moments, but yeah, this is the move. I'm not gonna lie, like, cause like recently, I'm like, when I play other people, at least IRL, I don't draw metamorphosis as much, and I think it's because I'm not like speeding through my deck enough. And that's what you get with the upstarts, you know? Alright, peace.